Part 1. The Quiet Genius with Have you ever felt like your silence was misunderstood? That your deep thoughts were mistaken for shyness? Or your solitude was misread as loneliness? What if I told you that your introversion is not a flaw, but a profound signal of a rare kind of intelligence, one that doesn't scream, but whispers, and yet echoes across time? Today we're going on a psychological and philosophical journey, one that will challenge how you see yourself and how the world sees you. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror for the soul of the quiet thinker. Imagine a child sitting alone under a tree, a book open in their hands, lost in a universe that exists only in their mind. While others run and shout, this child is still, yet their mind is in motion, faster than light. That child might be you. And that stillness, that preference for internal worlds, is not a weakness, it's the first sign of genius. As Immanuel Kant once said, thoughts without content are empty. Intuitions without concepts are blind. Introverts intuit deeply and think in layers. You are not blind, you see what others miss. The first sign that your introversion equals high intelligence is your need for solitude, to think deeply. Not just to rest, but to think. You don't just react to life, you contemplate it. While the world rushes to respond, you retreat to reflect. And in that reflection, you uncover truths others overlook. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Do you feel that? That pull inward? That's not escapism. That's inner exploration. But here's the question. What is the quality of your inner world? Is it a garden of thoughts or a battlefield of doubts? True intelligence isn't just having thoughts, it's being able to question them, refine them, even contradict them without fear. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." As an introvert, you are cursed or blessed with the inability to leave life unexamined. And that is your second sign of deep intelligence, a relentless drive for self-inquiry. Let's go deeper. You've probably found yourself in a room full of people and felt like you were on a different frequency. You hear the words, but you're also hearing the silences between the words. You notice the micro expressions, the subtle shifts in energy. You're not just present, you're perceiving. That's the third sign. Heightened sensitivity to nuance and complexity. Introverts often excel at pattern recognition, empathy, and inference because their minds are tuned like a violin to the emotional tone of a room. But this sensitivity comes at a cost. You get drained easily. Not because you are weak, but because you are exposed to everything. You absorb the world, and it takes time to process it. That's not fragility, it's depth. You don't just skim the surface of life, you dive. And diving takes energy. So you retreat, not to avoid life, but to digest it. You're not overwhelmed because you can't handle life. You're overwhelmed because you're handling more of it than most people ever will. Now let me ask you this, have you ever been in a conversation and felt like the small talk was nails on a chalkboard? That's not arrogance. That's the fourth sign of introverted intelligence, a craving for depth. You don't want to talk about the weather, you want to talk about the nature of weather itself, or better yet, the impermanence of all things. You want to discuss meaning, not gossip. Ideas, not opinions. And when you find someone who can go there with you, you light up like the stars you usually contemplate in solitude.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
And speaking of stars, let's turn to the fifth sign, a rich inner world. This is not just imagination. This is architecture. You build entire systems of thought inside your head. You rehearse conversations before they happen. You replay moments in your mind, not out of regret, but to extract wisdom. You create art, music, writing, or even entire philosophies in your solitude. You are a universe unto yourself. And as Nietzsche once wrote, Invisible threads are the strongest ties. Your inner world is an invisible thread that connects you to something far greater than yourself. But this inner world is not always peaceful. Sometimes it becomes a prison of overthinking. You analyze, reanalyze, and paralyze. That's the sixth sign, introspective tension. You wrestle with your own mind. You question your choices, your worth, your path. But here's the paradox. It is precisely this wrestling that sharpens your intelligence. Like a philosopher in a cave or a mystic in a desert, your solitude is not absence, it is incubation. And finally, the seventh sign. You are driven by questions, not answers. You are not content with what is, you yearn to know why it is. While others seek certainty, you seek clarity. And sometimes, clarity is found not in answers, but in the courage to ask better questions. Here's one for you right now. If your thoughts had a voice, what would they be trying to tell you that you haven't yet heard? This is not a self-help video. This is a mirror. We are not trying to fix you. We are trying to reveal you. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart." Who looks outside, dreams; who looks inside, awakes. You, the introvert, are already on the path of awakening. You just didn't know that your silence was your superpower. Now imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. Below you, the chaos of the world. Behind you, the comfort of your cave. But in front of you, mystery. That's your life. That's this journey. And in the next part, we'll go even further. We'll explore how introverted intelligence isn't just a personal trait, it's a form of spiritual evolution. We'll meet the ancient mystics and modern minds who have walked this path before you. But for now, reflect on this. What if the very things the world told you were wrong with you are the exact things that make you extraordinary? Part 2. The Inner Cosmos, Introversion as Spiritual Evolution. Close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine your mind as a vast celestial dome, stars of thought scattered everywhere, galaxies of memory turning slowly, silently. This is no ordinary mind. It is not loud, flashy, or chaotic. It is quiet, ordered, and profound. Most people never travel within themselves far enough to witness this inner cosmos. But you, if you're truly introverted, you already live there. This is not a metaphor. It's a reality that philosophers and psychologists have pointed to for centuries. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, once wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. What lies within you is not confusion. It is complexity. And the ability to navigate that complexity with grace is not just intelligence. It's a kind of spiritual enlightenment." Let me ask you a question that may unsettle you. When was the last time you truly sat with your own thoughts, without distraction, without judgment, just listening? If the answer is not often, don't worry. That's the journey we're on. The introvert's mind is not just analytical, it is contemplative. You don't just process data, you dwell in it. You allow ideas to marinate, to ferment, and from this fermentation comes wisdom. This connects us to the ancient Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, famously wrote in his Meditations, "Look well into thyself, there is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." You don't need to be loud to be mighty. You don't need to convince others, you need only to be convinced within yourself. Your solitude is your forge. It's where you are tempered. Let's explore more deeply the sixth sign from before, introspective tension. This is something few understand. Most people fear silence because in silence, they hear themselves. But your mind is built for the cave. You don't need to run from yourself. You're willing to face the shadows in your psyche. And that, paradoxically, is what makes you radiant. Light is not born from avoiding darkness. It's born from understanding it. This self-understanding is the foundation of all high intelligence. True intellect is not just the ability to solve calculus problems or debate politics. It's the capacity to hold opposing truths in your mind without collapsing. It's the patience to sit with ambiguity. It's the courage to say, asterisk, I don't know, asterisk, and then let that not knowing become a portal to deeper inquiry. This brings us to a powerful realization. Introverted intelligence is non-linear. You don't learn in a straight line. You spiral. You loop. You revisit old thoughts with new eyes. What looked like confusion years ago now reveals itself as subtle wisdom. You are not a computer, you are a philosopher. And philosophers evolve in layers, not ladders. In fact, think of the great sages of the past. Lao Tzu, Buddha, Descartes, Simone Weil, Kierkegaard. Were they extroverts? Rarely. Most were contemplatives. They withdrew from society not because they hated it, but because they saw through it. They saw that the noise of the crowd often drowns out the whisper of truth. And so they went inward, not to escape, but to hear more clearly. Let's talk about one of them, Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher who wrote the Tao Te Ching. He said, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom. That's the essence of introverted intelligence. You don't just seek to master systems, you seek to master the self. And that journey is not always glamorous. It's often lonely. But in that solitude, you find the eternal. Have you ever felt like you were too much for others or, paradoxically, not enough? That's the introvert's paradox. You feel deeply, think expansively, but express selectively. People don't always see the storm within you. But here's the secret. You don't need them to. You are not here to be understood, you are here to understand. And in that understanding, if others catch a glimpse of your depth, that's a gift, not a requirement. So where does this leave us in the modern world? A society that worships speed, noise, visibility, where social media rewards the loudest, and depth is often sacrificed for likes. How does the introverted, intelligent soul survive here? The answer is by becoming the still point in a turning world. You don't fight the noise by becoming louder. You fight it by becoming clearer. You reclaim your time. You protect your energy. You create boundaries not because you're antisocial, but because you're pro-self. You learn to say no, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. And in that space you create, your mind blooms. You write, you reflect, you study, you dream. And slowly you become the lighthouse others seek when their own waters grow turbulent. Let's revisit the fifth sign, a rich inner world. We often undervalue this in ourselves. But this inner world is where your creativity lives, where your moral compass is calibrated, where your future is visualized. It's not childish to daydream, it's visionary. Einstein himself said, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world. So here's a challenge for you. What if you treated your inner world as sacred? What if you gave it the attention you give to your phone, your work, your obligations? What if, just once a week, you journaled, meditated, or simply walked in silence with your thoughts? How would that shift your life? The truth is, many of the world's problems come from people who haven't met themselves. They react, they blame, they project their pain. But you are willing to meet yourself, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. That courage is not common, it is not praised, but it is powerful. So if you've ever been told you're too quiet, smile. If you've been labeled shy, thank them. These are signs that you are walking a different path, a quieter path, but one that touches the divine. Henry David Thoreau once said, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. You don't need to go to the woods. You already carry the forest within you. Remember this: you are not broken. You are not weak. You are not behind. You are becoming, slowly, silently, brilliantly. And in the next part, we'll reach the peak of this journey. We'll explore how your introversion can become not just a private gift, but a public force. How the quiet ones are often the ones who change the world because they first change themselves. But before we go there, ask yourself this: what would it mean to live your life as if your solitude was your superpower, not your shame? Part 3. The quiet ones who change the world. You've made it through the silence. You've walked through the forest of thought, sat with your shadows, and glimpsed the stars within your own mind. But now comes the most powerful realization of all: your introversion, once seen as a limitation, is actually your greatest form of influence. Not because you seek attention, but because you offer depth. Not because you control others, but because you understand yourself. This is where introverted intelligence becomes transcendent. It no longer serves only you. It begins to serve the world. Let's begin with this. The world is starving for depth. It's drowning in noise, flooded with distractions, overwhelmed by surface-level solutions to soul-level problems. And you, yes, you carry an antidote. Your silence is not absence, it is presence. And the seventh sign of your intelligent introversion is this: you influence not by force, but by frequency. Like a tuning fork, you bring resonance to the rooms you enter. You don't demand attention. You emit alignment. Consider the mythic archetype of the wise sage, the one who lives away from the village, only to return when the people are lost. That's not a fantasy. That's a psychological truth. The most powerful minds often retreat not to escape, but to prepare, to distill their understanding, to purify their insights. And when they return, they speak few words, but those words carry the weight of mountains. This is the role you are here to play. Perhaps not loudly, perhaps not even publicly, but profoundly. Gandhi once said, "In a gentle way you can shake the world." That is the introvert's revolution. It is not televised, but it is transformative. But here's the challenge. To fully embody this role, you must dismantle the lie that says only the loud matter. This is the lie of the modern age. The lie that equates volume with value, exposure with excellence, talking with knowing. But what if you became the exception? What if you became the person who speaks only when they've listened deeply, who acts only when they've reflected fully, who leads not with charisma but with character? This is not just theory, it's psychology. Studies have shown that introverts are more likely to make rational decisions under pressure. They're less susceptible to groupthink. They are more attuned to long-term consequences. Why? Because they don't react, they respond. And that response is rooted in reflection, not ego. Let me ask you a dangerous question. What would happen if more leaders in the world were introverts? Would we have fewer wars, better policies, more compassion? Think about it. History shows us that some of the greatest thinkers, inventors, and visionaries were deeply introverted. Nikola Tesla, Marie Curie, Rosa Parks, J.D. Salinger, Emily Dickinson. These weren't just quiet people. They were quiet forces of nature. And they didn't just retreat. They returned. Vain, when the world needed them most. That's your calling too. But you must be willing to trust your process. Your solitude is your training ground. Your thoughtfulness is your sword. Your introspection, it's your shield. The battle isn't out there, it's in here. And when you win it, The world outside begins to reflect the peace you've created within. Here's the irony. While extroverts may dominate the spotlight, introverts often dominate the legacy. Why? Because they plant seeds, not just fireworks. They build foundations, not facades. They write books, not tweets, and books endure. The ideas of quiet minds often outlive the noise of loud ones. But here's a warning. You can't live in the cave forever. Yes, the cave is sacred. It's where you found yourself. But eventually, you must emerge. Not because the world demands it, but because the world is starving for the depth you've cultivated in silence. When introverts speak, they can change the axis of a conversation. When they create, they can shift the culture. When they lead with empathy, integrity, and vision. So how do you begin? Start small. Share your thoughts, not to impress, but to connect. Create something not for applause, but for truth. Listen deeply to others, to yourself, to life. And then, when the moment feels right, speak. Speak with the weight of all your silence behind you. Speak with the clarity that only introspection can give. Speak like someone who has walked through their own mind and returned with gold. Let's revisit the first sign: the need for solitude, to think deeply. You now understand. This is not a retreat from the world. It is a return to essence. Your ability to be alone is not loneliness. It is self-sufficiency. From this solitude, you gain insight. And from insight, you gain influence. The second sign: relentless self-inquiry, is your compass. When others are lost in distraction, you are anchored in awareness. You question not just the world, but your own motives, fears, desires. And this makes you a rare kind of human. One who is not ruled by their unconscious, but informed by. The third sign: your sensitivity to nuances, your radar. You detect what others dismiss. You see the subtext. You feel the emotional temperature of a room. And this makes you an incredible friend, partner, leader. Because you understand people often before they understand themselves. The fourth sign: a craving for depth, is your mission. You are not here for shallow waters. You are here to dive, to ask the hard questions. What is truth? What is freedom? What is consciousness? These are not distractions for you. These are necessities. And in asking them, you keep the soul of humanity alive. The fifth sign: a rich inner world, is your sanctuary. But it is also your responsibility. The world needs your vision, your art, your perspective. You may think, who would care what I have to say? But the better question is, what if someone's life depends on hearing it? The sixth sign: introspective tension, is your forge. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But it's also where your greatest transformations occur. You grow not by avoiding the fire, but by walking through it. And you emerge not burnt but reborn. And finally, the seventh sign: you are driven by questions, not answers. This is your eternal fuel. You are not satisfied with easy truths. You want the real ones. And this hunger for truth, this refusal to settle, is what makes you not just intelligent but wise. Let's end with a final question. One that could change everything. If you fully accepted that your introversion was a rare form of intelligence, how would you live differently? Would you stop apologizing for your quiet? Would you start trusting your vision? Would you finally realize that the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more depth? You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not hiding.